Sup? Welcome to BroClip. I'm Chad. I'm here with my dogs, Johnny 2Js, Andy the Panty Dropper Kennick. And this week, we killed a pack of Natty Light, cut class, and played Trine. Welcome to No Clip. I'm Chad Rutherman.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today we're going to be joined by a special guest, Daniel Otten.
Hi.
That's about all he'll say. Today we're going to be talking about Trine, which is a game that was developed by Frozen Byte and published by, we're going with Novelist? Novelist. And it was released in 2009 on, the consoles of the time, so PC, PlayStation 3. I think it was on Xbox 360? I looked that up. It was not at all.
The quality of the research that goes into this is
I know.
astounding.
But it's basically a very traditional platformer, which in terms of gameplay, which is something that we actually have not had an episode on.
Weirdly.
Well, possibly because
JJ hates platforms.
exactly.
I do.
Because he's bad at video games.
But platformers are when a lot of people think about video games, platformers tend to come to mind. If you don't immediately think of Space Invaders, Super Mario Brothers is what your brain is going to go to. And so when you judge a platformer and when you examine a platformer, you're always kind of going into that history of games where it's this very basic 2D walk jump kind of thing. It's very mobility based, and I think it's
very well trodden.
Yeah.
Which means that if you're going to make a 2D platformer in this day and age, you have to differentiate yourself a whole lot from the totality of the history that comes before it, because you have had so many platformers that have gotten the base mechanics and the feel of just jumping and moving in that 2D space so exactly that you're not going to make a breakthrough on that line.
Yeah. It's really difficult to it's one of those things where it's such a well-defined genre of game that when you play something that is a bad platformer, it's immediately apparent. If you pick up a game and go to walk from this area and jump to this platform, and you're that felt weird, you're probably playing a game that you just aren't going to enjoy.
Or you're playing Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah. Not a platformer. So that's good. So,
All that being said, I think bringing something new to the genre is precisely why this game is well regarded, and I think it definitely succeeds in sort of redefining the platformer in some way.
Yeah, that's this game's primary gimmick is basically what causes it to have any relevant level of success.
And also, I think the art style contributes a little bit. So the game also looks beautiful.
Well, as you're the
and
more,
unique.
I guess, aesthetically charged member, because I could not even remotely disagree with you anymore.
Really?
On that point, I think this game looks like hot trash.
What?
But,
Really?
Wait, are you serious?
Oh yeah, I hate how this game
looks great. It's the aesthetic exactly nails the story.
Have you read any reviews of this game?
No.
All of them are this game looks fucking beautiful.
And clearly your opinion has to match these people exactly.
I'm just bringing it up, JJ. Okay.
Well, I'm just probably going to upset a lot of people in this room.
Yeah,
during this podcast.
Go ahead and give your argument for why you think it looks
Well, really quickly, I was just going to say that the game, it's what the game is, because we just want to go into that. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Because, the game uses what is, in my opinion, just a very stock cartoon fantasy, pool to draw from. So you have, wizard with a big floppy hat, knight in comically huge knight armor.
Yeah, Fat Knight.
Fat knight in comically huge knight armor. And your roguish type who wears a veil and a thing over her head and a cloak
An
and uses a
Assassin's
grappling
Creed
gun.
outfit.
Basically. Yeah. And I don't even think that the game does a good job of letting your characters like stand out on the background. It all just sort of blends together. Not like in a way that makes it impossible to tell where you are or anything, but like I don't feel like you look significantly different from your surroundings to get like a good grasp of like a centralized point. Which could be an aesthetic choice because the game centers around having multiple characters on the screen when you play it multiplayer, and so you don't want to focus on an individual person. But I think it just ends up looking kind of bland, and it just looks like somebody throwing. It looks like Hearthstone.
It sounds like you're criticizing the aesthetic and not the quality of the visuals.
Well, I think that's what I was arguing against originally.
Okay, because the characters looking like archetypes, like you could at least make an argument fits exactly with what they're going for with this game. Is sort of like Canterbury Tales, classic fairy tale feel.
Sure, but I mean.
I disagree with you so much that I don't even know how to debate you.
It's like the fact that the characters invoke like sort of the archetype of whatever character they are, I think from the minds of the developer is a success.
Well,
it does that for you.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you can go ahead.
Well, if I was interpreting what you said before correctly, I think there actually was a gameplay criticism there too, which is that your characters that you play as don't sufficiently stick out from the background of the environment, which is a precision platformer, a specific problem. I'm just trying to specify that he's not necessarily just making aesthetic criticisms.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm talking
like,
generally about art design.
The wizard wears like bright, shiny blue. The rogue wears white. And the knight wears shiny armor. They all stand out on the background.
See, I have to do... Well, especially not the rogue, because she's
wearing white. She stands out the most.
Well, look at where the settings of these levels generally take place. They're levels in, like, caves with gemstones built into the background.
Right.
There's underwater segments where everything gets murky. There's,
That's
the outdoor settings where there's, like, a forest on a skyline there's just a lot going on aesthetically, and it's on a 2D plane that's shot from a camera angle that's so pulled back that...
Only when you're playing with multiple people.
Oh, right, yeah. When you're a single player, it makes a lot more... Which is This is something I want to get into much later, because I do have an agenda for this game. But yeah, the playing single player makes the feel of this game completely different. But
so you think that the level of detail is like a little too high in some of the environments?
In the background design, especially for a platformer, I would say yes.
See, I think that's one of my favorite things about the game is the background.
I think the merit of that, although this doesn't really refute your argument, is that level of detail sort of helps relieve the monotony of playing like a 2D side-scrolling game where there's not a lot of things to interact with.
It's part of their gimmick.
My thoughts, and it comes back to what is arguably like an unfair judgment to make on all platformers, is that I call back to that history where you basically say, like, if you're starting from a 2D platformer, you basically have to be starting from Mario. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Mario itself, is arguably one of the most, like, flawlessly designed games of all time. Like, you're looking at a character who contrasts with the bright blue background, and, like, everything you can interact with is a completely separate color from the things around it. And Trine is the exact opposite. Everything feels a little bit darker. Everything feels a little bit more cluttered and a little bit closer together. And it makes it just, like... I mean, I don't think that it caused too much of an issue while playing.
Right.
I just wasn't, like... I didn't walk away from it with, like, a brilliant picture in my mind.
I do agree that there was some times... when like the level of detail in the environment got in the way of gameplay. And the more that since I was just now looking at screenshots to make sure that I had like the clear visual image in my mind, since we're arguing about visual design here, the more I'm actually coming to agree with you. There is tons of color, tons of details, things at time almost look like sort of a watercolor painting,
right?
And that means that things blend a lot, specifically with shadows and the way that all the other like different color gradients in the environment interact with each other.
But yeah, I think that like the platforms and the things you can interact with for the most part stand out against that, though.
I'll give you
with some exceptions.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely to your credit, arguably, in fact, no, inarguably, the most important thing to see in the game
are the platforms.
The wizard's box.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely
is
easy to
is
see.
always very clear as to where that is, like,
And,
relative
like,
on the map.
The focus between, like, the difference between this and, like, Mario is Mario's more about, like, momentum and, like, the pure platforming of it all.
Right.
Whereas, like, Trine is slower and it's about the puzzle solving and the co-op.
Right.
If you're playing it with multiple people.
Yeah, especially because of the wizard character, this game focuses a lot more on, like, sort of a more methodical, like, puzzly way of getting through things, which gives two benefits. One of which is that you can take your time and figure out where everything relative is.
And when you're taking your time, it's nice that you have a nice, beautiful background to look at.
That was going to be my say. And the second thing is that you can actually, like, really absorb, like, what is all in front of you. And, like, even if you're staring at the same screen for a long time,
like,
it's still aesthetically interesting.
If they made, like, a Mario game with this much detail in the backgrounds, that would be a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to be like a visual treat is very much something this game is going for.
Yeah. And then obviously I have a bias because I think that, like, the fantasy aesthetic is just boring in general. So that's like, I'm not going to factor that into my criticism, but, like, even in, like, the idea of it servicing the story of the game, like, there's definitely an argument to be won in saying that the story of this game is complete hogwash and basically is irrelevant.
Depending on which angle you want to look at it from, sure. Yeah, but
the
the story can be completely thrown in the garbage.
The story to me is like, it's like Albert Einstein's last words. The game told me the story, and then I just didn't understand it.
Also, I don't think we've actually said this yet. The three of us, of the main NoClip cast members, excluding Dan, because we didn't want him around at all, you know.
That's true.
Played through this
Thanks
together,
for alienating me.
all at the
The
same
first
time.
15 minutes.
Co-op, with each as exclusive character, so you understand where we're coming from here. I was the wizard, Chad was
The knight.
and Andy was
The thief.
But in reality, JJ was the wizard, and Andy and I played the joint role of going, JJ, box here! JJ here!
Box. Yeah, and then also, I've played through Trine 2 in its entirety with Dan.
Yep. And I was the one true wizard.
Yeah. He played the game the way you're not supposed to, and he tried to solve all the problems with just the wizard and not ever switch.
This game makes that way more possible than most games that
I'm
would
just,
feature this
I'm
sort
just
of
teasing,
mechanic.
but yeah, I would switch between the knight and the thief when we would
So,
play.
I don't know if this is like a relevant time to ask this question, so maybe I'll pose it and we could do it later if you want.
Sure.
Or not at all if you don't want. Do you think this game works better as a solo experience or as a multiplayer experience?
Oh, I think that this game... Well, we can actually go into this right now if we want, unless you want to talk deeper on the mechanics first. No. Because that's... I mean, it's interesting both ways.
We can always get back to it, but again, I had never played this game single player, so...
Right. I played it single player really briefly, and I've also played it two player other than the time that I got really drunk and was incapable of doing anything.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We played
I've heard.
Yeah, Chad and I played it drunk once, and he
was the wizard, right?
Even more so could not distinguish things from the background.
Yeah,
because like I would be like, we gotta go here, and he's like, what are you even looking at? Like, jump on this platform. He's like, I can't see anything.
Like, Jonathan, I would jump off the left side of the screen to certain death. Like, it was not.
But yeah, it was don't play Trine drunk.
Yeah.
But
this is a really unimportant point, so I'm going to make it now.
Yeah. Sure.
I think it's interesting that we mentioned the story sort of being irrelevant.
Right.
The way that the story is constructed in this game, it doesn't make any sense that multiplayer is even an option.
Right.
Because the Trine is supposed to make it so that only one of the three characters can exist in the physical world at the same time.
Oh.
And then multiplayer just throws that right out the window. And the game, I mean, that's like the game's central, like, story object.
I feel like, I don't know how this game was, like,
The whole
marketed.
object is to, like, make it so they can all exist again.
Right.
Oh,
That's the point of the story.
They said that I remember it mentioned multiple times that they were bound together. I just assumed that was like more vague, and then they just like had to be around each other. At
That
the
was
same
the
time.
narrative explanation of why you could why you could cycle through different characters. But when you're playing multiplayer, it's just like a Dungeons and Dragons group.
How do they ever talk to each other?
I think it's like an inside there.
It's like a genie in the bottle thing. Who knows
Yeah.
what it's like.
Yeah.
inside
Like
there.
Martian Manhunter, Mind Link.
Okay.
I don't know about that, considering they occupy the same physical form.
You
So
know,
it's
whatever.
closer to like, man, I don't know, a non-completely obscure example of this. I'm like, member of the Brotherhood of Dada, probably not gonna land with a lot of people.
Or us,
Oh,
the
yeah.
important people it needs to land with to have relevance.
Sounds incredibly
Yeah.
stupid. Whatever.
But anyway.
Like a crazy person, basically.
But
Voices in
anyway,
their head.
I've played the game single player, 2-player, and 3-player.
Right.
And it's definitely the best with 3 people.
Right.
I do know that I think most critics disagree with that,
Really?
Yeah.
Uh,
which surprised me too.
the game is significantly harder. It takes a lot longer with one person.
I
So
imagine
if
that's
you're-
critics
probably
disagree
what
with
the
that, too.
point was.
They think the
No?
challenge of getting multiple characters through the puzzles makes it more
Man,
difficult.
I had a way different experience than most critics.
Maybe
did.
they didn't think of the genius tactic of get the rogue and one other character to one side, and then switch places with the other character, and then get the rogue back up there.
Yes.
I agree with you. I think that the multiplayer is definitely
Yeah,
the best way to play.
Because there's so few games now that let you play through a game in co-op that, like, I think that's one of the things that really draws me to this game. Is like, I just want to play a game with one of my friends and, like, actually play through a campaign together.
I don't think I ever would have played it otherwise.
Yeah.
Me too. Well, actually,
Well, obviously,
frankly,
we forced you to play this game.
okay. Just
JJ
to
went
clear this
kicking
up,
and screaming.
I am here on this podcast to have new experiences, to understand and force myself to spread my boundaries into game genres that I may hate a lot and never play.
Right.
So, I was completely open to playing Trine, and also completely open to thinking that it
It's
was...
so blasphemous that you got to play as the wizard.
It is?
Well, to be fair, I wanted to play as the wizard, but my controller, the Steam controller, has like that slide pad as its right stick, and using it as a control stick is really like uncomfortable and weird, and the mouse was too sensitive to accurately like draw things. And so I just had to give it to him, who was playing with a regular dual stick controller, and played as the knight who I could not ever fully control where my shield was.
Right. Here. Maybe I can extend an olive branch here by saying that probably one of the best things I can say about the game is that it's a really good testament to their level design that they were able to create an entire class based around just constructing objects from nothing and moving them wherever you wanted to in different varieties, including objects that just float in space, and that the puzzles were like still difficult and the difficulty still ramped.
Yeah. I have to agree. And that was... The wizard class is, like, I think, the actual defining feature
Yes, I
of
think
this
so too.
game
Yep.
as a whole. Even when you're not playing as the wizard, just having that, like, ability there changes the way that you have to look at the game. It's like the primary puzzle solving. Playing as the knight doesn't really require you to
He's the
do
combat
anything
guy.
hard. Yeah, you
when
just kind of
trolls
hit things.
show up,
Yeah.
he hits them in the face.
I was
Right.
actually going to ask you about that. How much did you enjoy playing the knight
I
in
was
Trine?
wondering that as well.
Yeah. I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would.
You do love bashing things.
I do love.
Yeah.
As I was actually just mentioning the other day, while some everyone has like a preferred like class in a game, and like the preferred class that I always go for is what whoever can be best described as a fatty punchums, and like the knight is the absolute fatty punchums of this game, and like especially once you unlock the charge ability, like the knight is actually just a blast to play. My only complaint is that there wasn't enough for him to do. So, like, I ended up abusing the magnetic shield a lot, because you can, like, interact with objects, which is fun to do.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit of that. The only thing is, like, I miss the mobility of the rogue, because the thief is just, like, fun to play.
I think the thief is, like, the best character.
Mhm. If the thief had her own game...
She's the only one of the three I think that could exist in her own game.
Right. Well, the
She
knight
has-
could, but it would just be a
Right.
different game.
She has the
kind of
best
game.
platforming abilities, and she has the bow and arrow as well.
Yeah.
A full wizard game would be barely describable as a platformer as much as it'd be descriptive as just like a
Make
puzzle
stairs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
jump up.
game. You spend so much time completely stationary,
Like,
looking at the
scribble notes,
environment.
kind of, right?
Yeah.
It would be really difficult. Like you wouldn't if you had it. Like if the wizard by himself, and this is what makes the wizard work in the game, and the reason why the other classes exist is because the wizard is like hilariously inept at dealing with enemies.
Yes.
So like if any enemy shows up and you're the wizard, you just have to throw that away.
You're just like fecklessly trying to like sweep it away with a box or something.
Yeah.
It just does never.
Well,
works
you
out.
can eventually get an ability where you can just like grab enemies.
Oh yeah, and move them around.
But
I don't
until
think
you
we
get
ever
that,
got to that
until you
point.
get that, the wizard is
That might be
really
just
useless.
as too.
Yeah.
You also get an ability called Monster Prison, which puts them in a cage.
It's surprisingly hard to use them.
Yeah. The reason that I asked about the night specifically was, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, I was just worried that in a game where like most of the reward comes from like puzzle solving and as you get harder in the game, like precise jumping and things like that, that having the guy that only gets to do its thing about 1/3 of the time, and that thing is just pressing X most of the time would be a bit monotonous.
Well,
I didn't know if the like additions of like the magnetic shield and I don't even actually know the mechanics of the charge would make up for that.
well, the charge is cool in a lot of ways, but the magnetic shield is really where like being able to do other things. But this is kind of where the beauty of the multiplayer experience kind of sits, in that when you're playing as I mentioned before, me and Andy yelled at JJ a lot about like putting boxes places and moving things, and that's because this game is very much like a group activity.
Yeah.
And so it's not like the wizard is just off doing his own thing and we're just sitting there with our dicks in our hands waiting for him to solve a puzzle. Like, we're actively helping him solve the puzzle at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
You know, by like jumping around.
by jumping around, and, like, I was dead like 2/3 of
There
the
were
game.
so many times where I'd be like, JJ, like, put a plank here, and then he would, and I would go to jump, and then he would move it.
There are plenty of opportunities to like mess with your like conspirators, which is
It wasn't even necessarily that.
hallmark of a good.
But you know that
multiplayer
JJ
experience.
wasn't doing it on purpose.
No.
He was just like, he was like, I gotta adjust it. And then I just fall to my death.
Oh yeah, and well, not only that, but we would do the same thing to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you jump on a platform while the wizard's still holding it, it just
falls.
falls. And so he'd be
Yeah.
like carefully constructing this thing, and then I would just be like, ah, and jump into it and like knock the whole structure over.
I was worried that you guys were going to sweep this under the bus, you assholes constantly competing to get to little
Oh,
experience orbs. And I would be like, okay, I'm going to build this thing, and I'd be sitting around carefully constructing
trying to
my
jump
nice
on
little
it.
bridge. And you would try and beat each other at such a speed that you would inevitably just destroy everything and create. No one would get it.
I've never played Trine's 2 or 3, but you two have played 2, right?
Yes.
In 2, did they add like a score counter? Because I
In
feel
two
like
that you share experience. I don't remember ever.
Well, you
like,
share
beating
experience
it.
in
share
one,
it,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just, we wanted to see who could get to it.
Yeah.
So
Because,
it's just
like-
like a totally pointless.
Yeah, like
Yes.
the person who collect that would be because it is
They
pointless.
did
It
not
doesn't
add
mean
score
anything.
No, there's no
There's
score
no score
counting.
counting.
They totally should be because like that made everything so much more like just joyous.
So it was more like Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
each other.
It would be exactly like Gauntlet, something that's ostensibly a cooperative game, but then like with incentive to go against each other.
Are you
It still dicks
are
over
you
the
being
wizard, but
like genuine about saying you think a score counter would be a good thing?
I would.
Because that's actually one of my least favorite things about Gauntlet is that it just turns into like
Well,
a
that's-
weird
Friendship ruiner.
Yeah.
intramural competition to like kill the most skeletons.
Okay.
Well, that's to be fair. Gauntlet is a midway game, and they're like, their intention is like, with like developing that game is to cause like inter-party strife. Like they want people to like fight each other and like let people be dead as long as they can without like hurting them, so that they can get more points and just
'Cause
bragging rights.
Our experience, most recent experience with playing Gauntlet, although it's a game I played extensively in like arcades as a kid.
Right.
Andy and Joey and I play it, and we played once and had like a pretty good time, and then never played again because Joey pouted that I like got more points. So
Okay.
Well, you have to be playing with good sports.
The goal is clearly to incentivize sort of like joyous, fun, like 14-year-old nudge competition, not like actual competitive anything, like an optimized Gauntlet where two people were top of the world.
If you're like
I guess
speed running,
this
It
is
would be awful.
This is certainly idiosyncratic, but like what the first thing you described is like impossible for me to achieve. I'm just like, I'm so competitive that like if I don't get the most points, like, I'm not playing anymore. I'm completely unreasonable and stupid about it. So
yeah, I think it's definitely like I think it's probably a wise decision not to have that implemented, just because the game is so focused on like the idea of solving puzzles, and also you can play it by yourself. So it would kind of defeat the purpose to have a score that means nothing.
To go back to like the difference between playing like with the different amounts of people, or just give like
an example.
Yes, I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. Give an example. I got Trine 2, and I played it probably like 3 different times. Like sat down for I don't know like at least 2 hours each. And got like so far, and then like thought to ask Dan to play, and we got that far in like 1 hour together. So there's a big challenge difference in playing by yourself.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to like start talking about the puzzle solving, but and one thing that happened in Trine 2 was, and this sort of goes to a question about like what are the different ways that you can solve puzzles, and how does the game encourage you to solve puzzles. But I guess a criticism of the puzzle solving was that in Trine 2, we too frequently ended up building just the world's biggest high dive. Like, I found a way to just stack the horizontal platforms and then just, like, weight them with boxes.
Right.
So that the thief could, like, run out to the end and then jump really far. And, like, that one contraption solved too many puzzles.
Oh, yeah. Not so much in terms of, like, actual progression through the game, but one of our, like, absolutely most frequently used tricks was when you're trying to get up to one of the, like, hidden experience vials. If you just, like, if the wizard just holds a horizontal platform, then the thief can just jump and then jump to the next one. Unless I am playing. In which case, I will walk one step onto it and drop immediately into the abyss and ruin it for everyone.
But I think that like, using that little trick to get, like, you know, the big experience balls, like, that's not as big a problem as, like, being able to solve puzzles that are supposed to be more challenging than they actually are because you can build a high dive.
Right.
I kind of like the idea that there isn't, like, a specific way that you're supposed to solve the puzzle. Like, it's like you have all these tools, figure it out. But, like, it kind of goes a little too far over the line where you can just use the same thing to solve most puzzles.
How many times did I default to the water pile anytime, like, a water puzzle?
Oh, yeah, just to fill the water with enough stuff that you can basically just walk along the surface.
Yes. You get so many, like, you can make so many distinct objects as the late game wizard, you know. 4 of those little planks, 4 of the boxes, 1 of the ones you can place wherever.
You can, like, completely neuter puzzles.
Yeah, you just create them, you just dump them.
In Trine 2, like, we can pretty much completely broke it once we got the low gravity arrows. Which don't exist in the first game. Yeah. So, like, we make some kind of ridiculous contraption to get me really high or really far with the wizard. Then I shoot a low gravity arrow, and then I can just, like, jump to the moon.
Yeah, well, and not only that, like, the water pile technique, or, like, it ostensibly just the wizard pile. Like, the idea of just, like, stacking physics objects up indefinitely until somebody can reach the next platform is not only, like, reinforced in the fact that it actively helps you solve puzzles, but it, like, you would try and throw stuff in the water, and then when you realize that, like, it's not building up, we then jump in and then, like, realize there's an experience vial because the water's deeper than it normally is. So, like, you basically just get rewarded for cluttering the map with physics objects.
Yeah, throwing random boxes in the water actually provides you information. I never thought of that. Yeah. It's weird and true.
Mm. It's an unusual, like, I think that, like, overall, this game is something that is definitely, it's definitely a game that had good, like, game design principles, but, like, the sandbox element of it makes it, like, impossible for me to imagine playing this by itself.
What do you mean
by myself? Right?
By sandbox, you mean, like, the amount of different ways you could potentially solve the puzzles?
Yeah, like, the fact that there are so many, like, the fact that if you have all 3 players, the, like, different abilities combining with them in the world together makes it so it's, like, playing this by myself just seems like it would be so slow going. And, like...
It is very.
Yeah. I don't know. Ugh.
Which
You
is
got
weird that I
a
think
lot
the
more.
majority opinion on this is that the single player experience is actually somewhat better.
Yeah, that's very unusual to me. Like, as an
Yeah, I completely disagree. So, if you're looking for more of a challenge, then it makes sense. But like, it's definitely a lot more fun to play with other people.
Well, that's
in my opinion.
Yeah, coming from at the very least 3 of us, so not Andy, basically, have really only ever really played this game multiplayer. It's just like, I don't know, it seems like the multiplayer aspect of this game is so much what makes it, like, I don't know how this game was marketed, but I feel like it had to have really stressed that co-op.
Apparently not.
Really?
I've seen, at least some people complained that the co-op experience, it was problematic because the co-op experience is really good, is it is like buried in the options menu, and you actually might not even know about it unless you knew the love.
I think
we started the game 4 times before we successfully had all 3 players.
I don't think that this was built as a co-op experience.
That's a huge oversight on their part.
Because I watched a couple of videos like on people talking about the game in like preparation for this,
right.
And a lot of people were like, some people were like, "Oh man, can we play this multiplayer?" Like they had to like check and make sure it was multiplayer.
You floated back.
And then once they realized it,
man figures are there?
Yeah, once they realized it, though, they were really excited about it. So.
Yeah,
but if you don't play this game as a co-op game and you have the switching mechanism, okay, just so I can make sure to clarify, if you're the wizard in this game and you switch out of the wizard in single player, do your boxes stay?
Yeah.
Okay. Then, for the majority of the time, all that means is that this is a very pretty platformer that gives you just a ton of different interaction mechanics, that some of which can or cannot be used consecutively with each other.
Yeah,
right?
basically.
Sure.
It's
but
like,
you can't like game the game at all in single player like what you do in multiplayer.
All
like,
the time.
You can't like make the planks
high
high dive in single player, which makes it a lot more challenging.
I think you coined that term. It's the wizard high dive.
The wizard high dive.
The wizard high dive and the wizard pile.
I just assumed that it was sort of like, I also originally thought this was like going to be billed as a primarily cooperative game, but I think at least for some of us it might just be like our bias is showing through, because I think I might even sort of overrate this game somewhat because there's such a scarcity of like couch co-op options out there. Well, like I just love this game because it gives you that experience.
Yeah, I feel like especially now with like the prevalence of indie games, particularly in the PC market, like the games industry, the independent games industry is like an extremely reactive economy. And like I remember a few years ago hearing a lot of complaints about, like, especially in console games, like the overabundance of multiplayer only games. And it'd be like, this game only has multiplayer, or this game's focused on multiplayer. And it's all online and it's all single screen. And like the reaction I've seen to that is that there are a lot of independent games coming out now that are extremely couch co-op focused, and it's like that's why I was surprised to find out this game came out in 2009, because that seems like way before.
It's ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, but that's, I guess, explains why I didn't bill it, because I don't think people were as outraged about the fact that you couldn't just sit down with your friends and play a game.
And we've seen that the way they wrote the story makes no sense in co-op. Clearly they weren't thinking co-op when they made the game.
But at the same time, like, there's no way that like the people at Frozen Byte think that like people are coming to this game for the story. It's not like they put the game out there like, we really like this co-op mode, but we can't advertise as co-op because it completely invalidates our masterwork.
Yeah. If you think the story in Trine 1 is like irrelevant, in Trine 2, it's like actively incoherent. Andrew and I, we may have like somehow missed a key part of the story early on. Either that, or there's some kind of like weird recurring joke that doesn't quite land, where the narrator who keeps talking about pumpkins and like saving pumpkins, and at no point in our playthrough did we do jack with pumpkins.
There's like a pumpkin themed boss, isn't there?
Yeah, but there's no like explanation about
why pumpkins are relevant.
Pumpkins being important, or
Well, our experience with it was I feel it was colored by the fact that we knew we were playing it for this podcast, but then very quickly overcome by our own instincts, which was like, we started the game, and we were like, all right, shh, we're gonna listen to the dialogue, and it plays the cutscene, and we do that for the first 2 levels, and then immediately just switch to as soon as the load screen comes up, just talking over it and not caring.
Well, you did the same.
Yeah, we did not. I don't think Andy potentially, and you, if you looked it up, just could not. We could not sit here and tell you. What
this is not an episode where you're gonna have to be worried about spoilers.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people could actually just listen to this and be like, "Yeah, do you want to play this game? Here's what's good."
I mean, it's basically you fall into that whole world where you can only exist through the Trine, and then you try to escape it.
Oh, is that not the real world?
I don't think
No,
so.
it is the real world.
Is it?
Yeah, I think.
Then how come they all can't exist at the same time?
Well, because the Trine is their bodies are trapped in the Trine. That doesn't make it not the real world.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Depending on which one of us is right.
Yeah, I'm not super confident
in the
about my
first
answer.
game, they all just happen upon the Trine, and they get
They
stuck
touch
in
it. I thought they got sucked into it.
which I thought took them to another place.
In the second game, the
Or
Trine
it
is
combi-
Aslan for some reason.
Yeah, the Trine just comes.
They're
to them
super
and
happy to see it, and it is a benevolent force in the second one. They are, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it shows up at the wizard's house. And it's
they're
oh,
they
the
greet it like
Trine.
an old friend, and they're like, "Oh, it's the Trine."
And so it's also personified.
I mean, it moves of its own power.
Right.
It doesn't talk or anything.
They don't actually say, "Hey, what's up?" when the
No.
Trine rolls in.
And the Trine is
Or
not actually
greetings,
"Hello, my
how
children."
goeth?
No, they're like,
They don't-
oh, the Trine.
The Trine does not speak.
But they're
as
not
Aslan.
they don't dread seeing the thing that bound their souls together, which you think that they might.
Well, the game is inherently lighthearted.
Yes.
That's the
And I was going to mention it's not a great criticism to say that the story is not particularly interesting in this game, because they're going for a storybook come to life sort of. There's a childlike feel to the story, and that's intentional.
Right. Well, I think that definitely informs the aesthetic, but and I don't even think that I would never levy the story as a criticism against this game, because it's just not what you go to this game for.
Right.
Maybe you're playing it single player. If you're playing it single player and the story was as
But
irrelevant as it is,
most platformers don't have much of a story at all.
True.
So.
yeah, so it's possible that you could argue that it doesn't matter either way, but
It gives you more than Save the Princess.
yeah, slightly.
Slightly.
At least at the end of Mario, I knew what had happened.
Yeah. I don't really know where the evil ghost guy came in.
Evil. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last boss, the evil ghost king person that you run away from.
I'm putting boss in huge air quotes.
I think that's why the Trine wanted us and drew it to just to kill that evil ghost king.
Like,
No,
get it
maybe
to
that's
the
why
top
it's
of
such a
that tower.
pal in the second.
Yeah.
So the final boss is actually a good point to bring this up. Is that one of the things that you mentioned is that the game sort of has 2 elements, and that there's sort of a puzzle solving element and a precision platforming element, but there's 0 precision required in this game at all. This game is far more focused on the puzzle element and actually creating your
Solution?
path
Yeah.
to the next area than it is the act of platforming. The thief has an element of that to get to certain areas, but largely this game you can get up a lot of edges just by mashing the jump button
Yeah.
to kind of get to the edge and
It's
then jump off the corner.
like Skyrim climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
Strategy. If
Where
you
you're just,
jump enough, you'll kind of find an imaginary foothold.
Yeah, you're just kind of riding the exposed polygons. So in that regard, I had something there.
Talking about how
Totally gone.
I'm assuming
The
what you were
lack
going to
of
say was that
precision
at the end
platforming.
it suddenly became much more precision based.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you. Leaving all that in.
He teed that one up for him.
He did.
Yeah, you gotta
crush it.
Yeah, the final boss is a horrific departure from the rest of the game. And while I've heard wildly negative things about that, I actually was totally fine with how that last level played out.
Me too.
But it is a very different
I feel
experience.
like it wouldn't have been so different if you played it single player. because you would have had to do more precision platforming.
I suppose.
But yeah, it turned when we got there. Like in the first game, the final boss is platforming based, whereas in 2 it's like a combat thing.
Right.
So yeah, we got there and we struggled pretty hard with it. It took us several tries to get through it.
When we played through Trine 2, and I'm struggling to think of like a justification for my behavior, but I actually think I'm just a selfish idiot. I like refuse to play as anything other than the wizard. And so when we got to the boss fights, I remember the boss fights being me doing almost nothing at all, and Andrew just killing the boss. Which I was thinking, like, why didn't I play as like one of the combat characters when we fought the bosses? And I think I was just being stupid.
Yeah, and I questioned you about it every single time, and you were just like, dude, fine as the wizard.
He really put himself in the shoes of
like, I switched back and forth.
I really immersed myself in the wizard and just did not want to bring
You put yourself in the curly-toed slippers of the wizard of Amadeus.
God. So yeah, the game's harder if you do the game with 2 players and one of them doesn't fight the boss. It's a weird idiosyncrasy of this game.
Yeah.
So strange.
It's very unusual.
Just in case.
I'm actually going back to the final boss in the first Trine. I am always kind of a huge fan of like the final difficult experiences in games being like huge departures from the things that came before them.
Sure.
So it was in terms of actual gameplay.
Like Pig Ganon.
Yeah, you don't like the Puppet Ganon is
Puppet Ganon. I said Pig Ganon.
Yeah. Your reaction to getting hit by aluminum foil was like embarrassing.
But anyway, I will let you continue your point.
Okay. I actually really enjoyed the final boss, like mechanically, in comparison to the other things that you did mechanically through the majority of the game. Because since I played the wizard the whole time, it was pretty much the first and only time where there was like a lot of consistent tension through an entire level. I mean, you had so many of those checkpoint spots so often that even though there were 2 or 3 times when I'd be like left alone and up there and had to make it to the level myself, there wasn't a whole lot of cost for failure, and your successes kind of happened so often with such rapid success, and they began to sort of like lose significance to me.
Yeah.
So once you get to the final boss and you have to go through almost the entire level at one time without making any significant mistakes, it was really my sort of stand-up moment with the game. Even though it probably wasn't the most fun, air quotes, I had with the game, because I just like dicking around with you guys, and when we got there we had to like serious pants for a few minutes to try and finally beat it.
A lot of the conversation stopped. It like turned into like the squad radio, like JJ go north, Bravo Winter.
If you can't tell, Chad is ex-military.
Yeah. But actually, it was interesting because it was like the first platforming challenge as the knight, who actually like kind of like the platforming best when you're locked to only being the knight, because there's no cheating. Like you just have to make every jump. But in the final boss, like it was a platforming challenge, but also I had the ability to destroy wizard platforms, and since that's what they use to block you, like I became like the way to get through stuff if he was moving something else or creating a thing. Mm-hmm. So it actually really gives all 3 characters like a unique thing to do.
Yep.
So I definitely liked the final boss, though it is just really unusual that it took such a sharp left turn.
Yeah.
Just for there's no warning.
Oh,
I mean, maybe in the story there's a warning, but who gives a shit? There's no warning.
I feel like it is a very fitting final boss for the game, though.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that I wasn't standing still. There's so much of the game. Anytime I was doing something that actually actively involved me, I had to just stand there. Anytime I was moving, I was either trying to do some like specific platforming, which meant either the 2 of you were dead, or it was easy platforming that didn't require any thought at all, or there were enemies on screen, which meant I was just running away from things and that didn't have any active goal.
So you're saying you moved a lot because Andy and I were dead 90% of the time.
This isn't a very salient point now, since the game came out in 2009.
Sure.
But one serious criticism of this game is that it wasn't worth the price tag when it came out.
It was definitely worth the like $2.49.
Yeah, I don't know what it goes for now, like without it being on sale to sort of retail now.
Right.
But it was a $40 game when it came out, I think.
Ooh.
And this is like, I don't know how many hours is this game.
Well,
It's not
if
long.
it was billed as a single player game and the single player is slower going,
that's true.
We finished it in about like
6
6
hours.
I was gonna say this is about a 6-hour game.
Yeah.
And so this is
it's
It's
like
not a
Force
lot.
Unleashed 2.
yeah, it's not a lot of game for $40, but
That's
you're not
true.
gonna pay that now. So
Yeah.
and it's certainly worth.
Yeah.
I mean, I paid $10 for it.
I think I paid about $10 for trying to.
I feel like in 2016 it retails for probably around $20, like just at like
That's not
the
unreasonable.
base
I don't
price.
think.
But
Especially
it's-
if you have
yeah.
people to play with.
Trine 2 is twice as long, so it's more worth the price tag.
Mm.
This is tangentially related to the boss point, but it might start a whole separate discussion. So if you have a small,
We
point
might
to
be
make-
talking about the same thing.
I
Well,
was just going to
If,
ask about it.
hold on, if it's going to start a separate discussion, we should probably talk about it after the break. Or put the
After the break. Clap again. That was horrible. Thank you.
All this discussion of like the final boss actually reminded me of a feature of the game that I had completely forgotten about, which is that there were other intermittent non-final boss battles, like regular like meaty foes that you would have to sort of interact with. Did those have a purpose at all?
I'm actually really curious as to what your opinion on those as like a mechanic in the game were.
I mean, I'm the wizard, so I didn't
That's
do
what,
anything.
yeah, that's why I'm curious.
I think they're supposed to give the knight something to do.
Yeah, because I thought they were great.
I feel like they're kind of a miss for the game.
Well, I mean, I think that when you're playing multiplayer specifically, I think that the thief also has like, because they make like the recurring troll guy who has a weak point in the back of his head
Yeah.
is like, that's something that like both the knight and the thief are equally capable of dealing damage to.
Right.
It's just like the knight's damage output is greater.
Right.
So like he jumps and hits, and the guy can just pump him full of arrows constantly. So yeah, the wizard just seems like they don't do jack anything in that fight.
There was one instance in Trine 2 that I thought made it somewhat interesting, whereas you get captured by a boss and you get put in a jail cell, then you have to escape and then go fight the boss. So there's some kind of like interplay there,
Yeah.
which felt like made the whole experience better with the boss.
Mhm.
But that's the only time they do anything like that.
Like I kind of have to wonder if they were put in, if it was like a conscious decision that like they thought that the platforming gameplay will have like gotten stale if you
Just
play
change the
it
pace.
too much in a row, and so that you have like a one screen arena boss fight, or if it's something where they were putting the game together and were like, games have bosses, let's put, but it's kind of, I don't know.
Somehow I doubt that was the reason.
I think it's
You want to give them more credit than that, but at the same time, you look at a game like Deus Ex 3 Human Revolution,
Yeah.
where it's like, that game is like a wonderful game, like a really well-made game, and then the boss fights were like, seemed like they just wanted something there, and then they even outsourced the development of them,
Yep.
which is weird, but like it just seemed like I guess they felt like they needed them.
Yeah, we're talking like AAA here, so it's kind of hard to see how much of this really carries over in like Trine, as we're talking about now.
Right.
But you'd really be surprised the amount of things that are put into like modern big budget games solely because of what they presume consumer expectation to be, even if it's just no relation to like the game that the developers are actually trying and want to make. That's the reason you get multiplayer in like the Tomb Raider reboot, multiplayer in Mass Effect.
The Last of Us.
That was exactly what I was trying to
Yeah.
think of. The Last of Us.
I've actually heard really good things about that multiplayer, but I don't want to get into that.
Sure, but the point is that it wouldn't exist if they just had the ability to do it.
Yeah.
They made the best of a situation that clearly they never intended.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's just to give the knight more to do on a single player playthrough.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then I think that, in combination with a lot of the experiences that I had trying to work through it as the wizard anytime you had any sort of combat scenario, if they needed those circumstances, I would have just rather wished that they would have chosen a different third character with a different, better balance of like combat abilities and mechanical platforming, and also given the wizard like a really shitty attack move.
The wizard really could have used like anything to, because like, yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, the whole, like, division of labor between the characters in this game suggests that giving the wizard, like, an attack move is just totally pointless. Like, in a single-player mode, which is, like, we've all agreed sort of the way that they constructed the gameplay, you can immediately switch to a character that specializes in combat.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense to give the wizard an attack move. Because of, like, the importance of the wizard throughout the puzzle playing, in a way that would be sort of, like, suggesting, like, here, just play through as the wizard.
Yeah, the wizard is already such like an omnipresent like factor in the gameplay that like having a situation where the wizard can also defend himself makes it.
You could play as just the wizard through
Right.
the game if you wanted to.
Yeah, like in a single player playthrough, it doesn't matter because you're literally a button press away from just being the knight and killing the enemy. But in a multiplayer playthrough, it makes the other players actually have to care about where the wizard is and the positioning of him.
Yeah, so
Fine,
yeah,
if
if
that's
it
the
were
case.
designed as a multiplayer game, which we decided it is not, then that would make some kind of sense.
Right.
Even if it's not like offensive, because if you think that it makes some sense in a multiplayer environment where we're playing as distinct characters, in a single player environment, do you still believe that it was put there for the knight to have something to do? Because in that case, it's not like that's really...
Yeah, like, because when I was playing it by myself, I would only ever switch to the knight when enemies showed up or in the boss battles.
Right.
So are we talking about combat in general here, or the boss battles? I've kind of lost the thread of this.
I think the point applies to both, but it's
like
stronger in the
goblins
boss
and
battles
skeletons
because there's no
show
platform
Because
involved. It's just a
our
square.
like boss battle discussion connected to like a larger point that I wanted to ask about, like the combat in general.
Then go ahead.
But just to say, like, and I think you're getting at this, so we're sort of already here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that the combat in this game, especially since you've played as the knight, I played as the wizard, so I have almost
Right.
zero
The
relevant
opposite experience. Yeah.
Do you think the combat in this game was like enjoyable, or was it sort of half baked?
I don't want to say it was half baked. It's kind of like the game plays like as a night only playthrough. The game plays a lot like a really easy hack and slash game. Like, I think everyone can agree that like my primary cause of death was jumping into a pit like an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, very rarely did an enemy actually kill anybody.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I think that, once again, the combat is better in the single player.
right.
Because, like, you'll be running along as the wizard, skeletons or goblins will show up, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta switch.
Right.
So there's, like, a little moment of panic, and then you gotta, like, deal with the enemies, and then there's ones up on platforms, you gotta switch to the thief to shoot them with a bow and arrow. So
Right.
it's definitely more geared toward the single player playthrough.
Yeah, I think that the combat in the game feels like it's something that's there to add an element of like a difference in kind, like something to do other than jumping or building platforms. But it doesn't feel like it's all that. Like, it's not. It's like the least important element of the game.
Right.
We all agree that the puzzles are sort of the
Yeah,
part
and-
of it.
Yeah, it's like the archer enemies, I think, are really well designed because they can sit in a place where you actually have to platform and puzzle solve to approach them and then dispatch them.
Mm-hmm.
The little the mobs, like the guys who just run at you with a shield, are like they're not really a challenge. Like, even the shielded enemies, even before you have the charge attack, which just knocks the shield away, you just hit them another time, and they go like, whoa, and then you just whack them again.
The only really affected gameplay in the co-op mode because I, as the wizard, had to permanently exist and be a thing you had to defend.
Right.
Because I was legitimately threatened by random mobs all the time.
Yeah.
And
The wizard is legitimately threatened by anything that can swing anything.
Yeah, and the combat is harder in single player as well.
Right.
You find yourself cause you can't just have 2 players die and then one person run the rest of the way to the little orb.
Yeah,
Right.
That was a criticism I forgot to make.
Yeah.
That too frequently was
So, yeah.
a legitimate way of getting past them.
So yeah, combat is a lot more threatening when you're only one person and you're trying to deal with the enemies on the ground and you're getting shot with arrows from above. Because the mobs come at you from both sides. So it is definitely geared for the single player.
Right. As anyone who's ever played any sort of fantasy styled combat game would know, is just having both somebody who's good in close range and somebody who has range together is infinitely better than just having one of the
because as the thief you can just grapple up to the skeletons, take care of them immediately so the archers aren't a problem.
Or even 2 of one type. Having the archer knight combination is way better than knight or knight.
Now, when Andrew and I played, because I insisted on playing the wizard at all times,
the combat was harder
bit
when
different
we played.
experience.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
So that's really something to be said for my totally unreasonable decision.
So
You do a challenge mode, have one guy just sit in a corner while enemies are on screen.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more ridiculous of a choice that was.
You would hear none of it at the time, though.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I regret my decision. I just think it was kind of absurd.
You're like, Dan, just play as anything else for a second. He's like, no, really, come on.
Even in situations where I was able to get across an obstacle and he was trying to and he couldn't, Dan would just switch.
Oh yeah,
You'd be the thief. I would have to talk him into it.
That's true.
God.
I just
You're holding the controller between your thumb and forefinger. It's you do it.
I was just really deep in role playing the wizard.
He made the staircase all the time.
Yep.
That was his go-to.
That's such an amateur move.
I love the staircase.
That's
I love
first
making
year
cute
of
little
Hogwarts
things.
level. Where were we?
We're talking about I think we were going to change subjects because we just kept making wizard jokes.
Well, I had one thing, which was based on the results of our combinations of the discussions about the bosses and the mooks. Am I correct in stating that we actually liked the random fights with diverse enemies more than the boss battles?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not even a question.
That's so weird.
That's not that weird.
I mean, isn't the purpose of a boss fight in the vast majority of the games to be either some sort of skill-based capstone of your experience, or to have something very, very different and interesting happen that you have to respond to?
Well, definitely the latter most of the time, I would say. But I feel in most combat-centric games, in most good combat-centric games, the, moment-to-moment combat should, as a rule, be more fun than boss fights. Because, a boss fight is supposed to be, a moment of tension and a difference in the gameplay. But if that's more fun than what you're doing most of the time, it seems like there's almost not even a point to fucking play.
Well, okay, but there's differences in how the interest curve develops and is shaped.
Dan is just really appreciating how eloquent I am.
You're just striking a bold position. Sticking with it.
Because you can have something that's very, very interesting, for a short period of time, that you could not base, an extremely long amount of gameplay around, and you could have something that is kind of interesting for an extremely long period of time that you can extend forever. So, if you accept that, then you can have boss battles that are more fun than the moment of gameplay that cannot and should not be the majority of the gameplay.
Well, I hate to be the boy who cried single player. But
you really have been.
Once again, the bosses are way harder in single player because they wreck your shit.
Yeah. It's probably... Okay.
Kind of subtly making the case for single player.
No, I'm just saying that the combat specifically is designed for the single player.
Right.
It stands out the most.
Well, not only that, but like, there was a boss that we fought. I don't know if you remember. In like close to the end of the game, at least like 3/4 of the way, if not like 80-90% of the way through the game, where the two of us were in the boss arena. But JJ wasn't. He was standing outside at a respawn point, constantly refilling our health.
I found a thing to do once.
So, like, that's a clear argument that playing single player would make that a lot harder.
Yeah, I'm not convinced.
Because I remember, like, when playing
Can you present more
by
evidence?
I remember playing by myself and dying to bosses.
Oh, yeah.
And it being tense.
When you're playing single player and you die, do you get locked out of that character, or do you just go to the respawn point?
You get locked out of the character.
Okay.
Until all three characters are dead.
That's a lot more forgiving than I thought it was going to be, and I like that a lot better because that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
If, like, just, like, one death and you're back to the respawn. But remember we spent, like, 20 minutes trying to climb that goddamn, like,
Yes.
wooden plank movement garbage
Maze.
tower?
Yeah, I do.
Like, if any one of us died, we had to start that whole puzzle again. Like, that just would have been a massacre. Like, we would have been there for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a good jumping off point, I think, for what I wanted, what we teased before the break.
Oh, yeah.
Alright.
Which is I wanted to sort of talk about the difficulty level in this game in general.
Mm-hmm.
And there certainly seems to be at least a thought that the difficulty is pretty distinctively different between single-player and multiplayer playthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
But for all of our talk of opportunities to sort of game what's going on, especially with the puzzles, and sometimes with the bosses, I didn't think this was a game that was too easy.
No, I agree.
It certainly wasn't, like, it wasn't notably difficult, but it was an enjoyable challenge level.
Yeah. I kind of want to, like, test the waters on this, because I don't exactly know how everybody feels about it. But I actually think that this is, like, a really good example of how to design the difficulty in your game, because it's a game that if you're playing it solo, you would rather it be more of a challenge, because, like, on a social level. Because if you're playing a game by yourself, I feel like you're much more willing to sort of, like, try and retry and do the same thing again and again and try and figure out how to do it. Whereas when you're playing a game with people, like, you don't want to be stuck on the same thing forever. It's like you go to a party and they just play the same song 10 times in a row. If you really like that song, by the, like, 4th time, you'd be like, I'd like you to stop. Like, so I think that the idea that
Timber.
Yeah, that's a great song.
You heard it here first.
Timber, great song.
Timber is great. Best song of 2015.
I feel like the more people that you get playing a game cooperatively, the smoother you want the progression to go. Just because, like, especially, like, multiple people playing at different skill levels, it allows for a lot of, like, JJ is not real good at platforming.
Even though I am the one who allowed us to beat the game.
Exactly, 100%. But definitely, like, is good at the puzzle solving, which is where I am not as good because I am adult. And so, like, getting through the game, like, by myself, I would have allowed myself a lot more attempts at a single thing. But in a group, I feel like it would have gotten real stale real fast.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said.
Completely on board.
Just want to make sure that apparently not a controversial
No
point.
interesting discussion to be had.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the biggest point, the most important, perhaps, point to take away from any discussion of the difficulty level is that, you know, on solo, it's a game that was made as a single-player game, so, like, the difficulty curve is exactly what you would sort of expect.
Right.
And multiplayer doesn't break the game.
No.
It's still challenging enough to be enjoyable, while you can skirt some things that in single-player are much harder.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is a question that I've asked, I would say, on 3 episodes already. This is apparently not something that I look for in games.
Alright.
But does this game have a difficulty setting? Like, is there, like, an easy, medium, hard mode?
I think there are hints you can turn on, which would make the game easier. I don't think it has, like, an easy normal hard.
I don't know what that would mean other than making the enemies harder.
Like stronger?
Yeah.
Maybe it does. I could be totally lying, but I don't think it has a difficulty setting.
And, like, that point is a fairly valid one, because this would be a difficult game to attempt to, like, differentiate levels of difficulty. But, like, it's, I don't know, it doesn't really lend itself to having a difficulty slider. But, yeah, I think the difficulty level is pretty much on point. You'd give it, like, it's a game that you can beat if you give it a shot.
This is like a 6 or 7 out of 10, I would say.
On Mo's hardness scale.
Yeah. Yes.
Who is Mo? What does he do?
He's a geologist.
Yeah. Do you remember Geology 101?
No. Got you there.
Fair enough.
Oh, God. Well, shit.
It also is just like a quick point. I don't think anybody would disagree. This game doesn't have a lot of replay value.
I would agree. But I also don't replay games, like, very often.
Just
anyway,
as something someone might be interested in.
As I've aged, I've become increasingly skeptical of the concept of replay value as a thing that you should value in, like, all game purchases anyway.
That's probably too big of a discussion to have right now.
I feel like it's got a decent amount of replayability because, like, I can't say I remember a lot of the puzzles. So, like, if, like, in a year from now, I'd probably be able to play through Trine 2 and enjoy it.
Yeah. I feel like I have a bias
Or
in this
Trine
kind of
1.
a thing because I just generally don't replay games very much. Not anymore. That, like, I have no desire to play through Trine again.
Now,
But,
can't
like,
say
I might if I was, like, a younger kid.
there might be only, like, 2 games that we've talked about that I'm itching to replay, or I will be itching to replay.
Right. If you're gonna lead with something like that, you have to tell us what the 2 games are.
No,
You can't just, like, let that roll.
Shadow of the Colossus is something I could see myself replaying, and Kingdom Hearts is, like, my favorite game, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
replay
that's
it.
fair.
Surprise.
How many times have you played?
I've beaten it, like, at least 20 times.
Probably.
Andy loves Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
In case
No.
anyone didn't.
That should be the name of this episode. BroClip, episode 9, and he loves Kingdom Hearts.
Try.
When you, I'm assuming we're cutting all of this out.
Probably.
I hope we do.
Okay.
It's just in case you're wondering.
And by
opinion on the
we,
matter.
you of course mean me.
Yes.
Alone
Because
in my
I was,
bedroom.
while we're talking about garbage that should never be uttered, when you were like, you said something about like trying and trying again, and I almost said, if at first you don't succeed, trying again.
Guess what? Episode title, putting it in.
Haha! You really underestimated how much we love garbage, so.
That's true.
It's true.
We do love garbage.
Garbage title for a garbage episode.
Yeah. Okay. So before we like close this out, I'm just gonna, I guess, fade into that line. Before we close this out, there's one other like brief conversation that I wanted to have that this game sort of got me thinking about. Is that as we like discussed a lot in the first half, the multiplayer aspect is really what kind of drew us. It's when we decided, like, I had a lot of time, and so we decided we wanted to play a game that we could all play together, and so we sat down and kind of talked about, like, cooperative games, and this game stuck out, specifically because it is, like, a specifically 3-player game. It just, like, is too perfect.
Right.
But, like, a lot of what makes this game fun is that multiplayer... Or, I'm sorry, what made this game fun during our playthrough is that multiplayer element, like, the immediate feedback and, like, that cooperative spirit and, like, getting that rolling. And I just, like, this game versus other games in terms of, like, a local cooperative experience. Because, like, I grew up with an older brother... And so, like, a lot of what got me into video games as a whole was the experience of playing games with him. And so I have, like, incredibly fond memories of going through, like, games all the way up until, like, a few years ago. where we would go through games together. Like, me and him beat Resident Evil 5 on War Hero, which is like the most trying on our relationship thing ever. But like that, like, I don't know, it's just like it's a big element, and like that's part of the thing that made this game cool. I wonder how it stacks up with you guys.
I mean, so you're asking how we believe this game fares as a cooperative game compared to other cooperative games?
By itself and also compared, like just like the cooperative experience that we had, and then also how other games do it better or worse. I'm not offering this as a writing prompt to just like.
I would say as a multiplayer experience by itself, it like succeeds completely because like it's a lot of fun. You laugh a lot. You dick with each other. You work together. You get through the levels. It's a ton of fun. Compared to other games, I think it stacks up like pretty well as well.
What's great about this is that it is a group cooperative experience, which is even more rare than. I mean, cooperative
just like
couch
a
co-op
two-player
in general is pretty a rare sort of breed these days.
Right.
And like a group cooperative experience that is like substantively a group cooperative experience is pretty rare, and that's part of what's great about this game.
Yeah.
It's not like where one player like does some stupid, unimportant garbage.
Right.
Well,
it's not
another player
somebody
actually
with a
plays the
Game
game.
Boy Advance plugged into the GameCube
Yeah.
playing as Tingle in the Wind Waker.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Shoot some star bits.
Yeah,
Galaxy.
I think specifically,
The anecdote really helped articulate that point better than my like collection of words.
each player has to meaningfully rely on other players at some point in time, which is really important for couch co-op and often sometimes in part even detrimental to online co-op. And also importantly, you have the opportunity to kind of fuck with each other slightly in ways that don't ruin the experience for anyone, which is definitely necessary inclusion for all couch co-op.
Yeah, that touches on basically why I wanted to bring this up in the first place, which is because I think that this game, comparatively to other games that I've played cooperatively, is like outright fantastic. Like to the point where I would say that this game is like of good quality, but then when you play it cooperatively, the whole experience like shoots through the roof. Because it's like it just like playing with other people actually makes the game better through the like experiential like lens. Like just because of the fact that it actually gives everyone something equally important.
Yeah,
to
I
them.
can agree with that because when I first like saw the aesthetic of the game, I was drawn to it,
and I was completely
right.
off.
Yeah, so I bought it and like was just playing it by myself, and I feel like if I would have just played it by myself, I would have been like, oh, it was
Kind of unremarkable.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
pretty good. But like, because I played it co-op, like it's really stood out in my mind.
As the wizard, I don't think I can agree with you that I think that it's amazing, and that's because I think it goes too far in either direction in terms of reliance. Like, there were too many circumstances where one of us at some point in time literally couldn't do anything. Times when you had to completely rely on someone else, and there was no other, like, positive thing that you could do in the interim while you're waiting for the other person to go for their goal. It was one of the reasons that I liked the last level so much, is because you're under time duress trying to, like, race against, was like, I assume lava that was chasing behind us at that point.
Oh, the last one? No, it was the... Was it?
There was something.
There was a reason we had to run fast.
Right.
And the reason I thought that was important was because everyone at all times not only had to work together, but also had to forward their own goals. They also had to not die individually while they were still trying to help each other out.
Right.
And that's where I thought that was a really good, like, star of the experiences that you had.
The grape job sticker.
Yes.
You look like you were going to rebut something about his wizardly points.
Oh no, I think it was fair.
Oh, okay, you were just reacting.
I
to
was
the
just
fact
reacting
that
to the fact that he was playing as a wizard.
Right? Yeah. One thing that you said is that in online co-op games, you feel like it's very common that the fact that you aren't literally sitting next to somebody is a huge detriment, particularly in like the communication.
Mm-hmm.
Hey-o! The other game does that really well. Portal 2. Because they implemented this ping system that lets you like hit things, and what a great transition Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
As always, remember to be a breakfast defector.
Think outside the box.
Yeah. 2 weeks from now, it's going to be our 10th episode, and we're talking about a game that we all like quite a bit, Portal 1.
Oh,
That's the transition I was talking
okay.
about. Yeah.
Oh.
I want to thank Dan for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, depending on the reaction, which we won't get, so you would just be back on another episode.
Yeah. Please leave reviews of my performance in the comment section.
Yeah.
We'll
have a form letter that you can fill out and mail to Dan, and he'll read it and then burn it, probably.
If you liked Dan, feel free to leave a like. If you disliked him, feel free to leave a like.
And we don't just mean in the context of how we did on the cast, just general opinions of him as a human being.
Yeah. We'll post his LinkedIn page if you want to...
Probably update that.
Home address.
Email me at a creased comic. It's nice to like other people's stuff.
So, yeah. In reality, if you want to get a hold of us, we have our email set up at noclippodcast@gmail.com. You can leave comments on our website, noclippodcast.com, on Twitter at noclippodcast, and on our YouTube, which is just noclip, actually. Yeah. Cool. Bye! I mean, that's good. We'll end it there.
I was kind of surprised that nobody cried during the podcast.